or good morning if you're on the other side of the Atlantic. We'll start in a couple of moments. Just wait to see if a few more participants will join. All right. So welcome to the workshop on the Reti English and the bird or Larsen opening, where we will talk about the setup for black, the repertoire for black that's based on the Slav defense. Today I will cover the Reti opening, or this move order that you see on the board with knight f3 and g3, first two moves. And my colleagues will cover different move orders for white. But the basis is, of course, that we play at some point c6, that we get our bishop out usually, and we create a very solid central structure that way. This move order with knight f3 and g3 that white plays, and it's a very modern setup these days when white wants to avoid opening theory, is quite flexible. So white can do a lot of things after that. He can, of course, depending on what black does, he can play c4 to attack this pawn. He can play d3 followed by e4. This is the King's Indian attack. It's also possible to play b3 and then we have the double fianchetto, which is something that I have covered previously in Modern Chess Workshop. And there's also a modern approach to play the Catalan against this c6 Slav setup. And so we will cover these four approaches: the Reti opening, the King's Indian attack approach, the Catalan approach, and the double fianchetto approach today. And the basic move and the basic kind of setup that I will recommend for black is with the move bishop g4. So not bishop f5, but bishop g4. And it's actually precisely this move order that I would like to recommend for black. So we don't start with the move c6 or knight f6, we start with bishop g4. And actually this is sort of like the reversed Trumpovsky. Some of you may play the Trumpovsky also with white, so you might be familiar with this. The only difference is that black has this extra move, or in this case, white has this extra move g3. And, in 95% of cases, people will play bishop g2 here. I will discuss shortly what happens if white plays knight e5, like in the Trumpovsky. But let us first have sort of an overview of all these plans that I just mentioned for white, these four major plans. So white usually goes bishop g2. And here again, we have a choice. We can play c6, or even knight d7, some people play to stop knight e5. But I would recommend the move order with e6. And I'll explain why. This is the modern move order against the Reti. And I will also provide analysis and explanations of the traditional move order with c6. e6 is a little bit more flexible, and I will explain why. So if white castles, we go knight f6, and now white has, like I said, four typical approaches. So the first approach would be to play c4, the typical Reti approach. Then we play c6. This is our Slav setup, very solid setup. And now there are two main plans for white in these types of positions. One is to take on d5 to determine the pawn structure in the center. And for instance, if black takes with the pawn, white's plan is to go d3 and later knight c3, let's say like this, and then push e4. So it's a very typical position, and it's playable for both sides. Many of these positions are completely playable. It's just a matter of taste what you're going to play. But I think that we have maybe a way with black to play something more, even more solid than this. And so here, when white takes on d5, probably the most solid move for black is bishop takes f3. so it's an intermezzo. And then when the bishop takes, we take with the c pawn. Now, the logical question here is, if we come back, why do we take on f3? Why don't we take with the c pawn immediately? In that case, there's this annoying move knight e5. It's a little bit more annoying now that the center has cleared up a bit, because there's this move queen b3, putting pressure on the b7 pawn, and black has some slight issues here. Maybe he has to play queen b6, then white can double his pawns and so on. So it's not such a pleasant position to play with black, and this is why we eliminate this knight at once, and then we take with the d pawn. If white plays queen b3 now, we can safely protect it with queen d7, not fearing any knight e5. And then we typically get this type of position. White usually plays d4, and we get the sort of a Catalan type of position where black is extremely solid. We'll see one excellent game of Magnus Carlsen in this type of position, where he beat Richard Rapport with black here. So this is the solid approach I recommend against c takes d5. There is another plan in the Reti opening, and that's move d3. And here black has actually a pretty wide choice of good moves. Black can play knight d7. This is the old main line. I'll cover that a bit later. There is also a move bishop e7, which is my recommendation here. And then there are other moves which we won't really go into, like d takes c4 and so on. But I want to kind of stress an important difference between the moves bishop e7 and knight bd7 here. The point here is that if we play knight bd7, it's a very subtle tactical point. If black takes on d5, can we insert bishop takes f3 as in the other line that we just saw? And then to take c takes d5. Okay, Heli says no. What's the point? The knight is hanging, yeah? No, it's not a, Berger, it's not a positional issue, it's a tactical issue rather. There is an intermezzo here, d takes e6, and now because the knight is hanging, we are losing a pawn. So it comes with a check, king takes, and white's up a pawn. So that's why we cannot really transpose into that line. We have to take with e or c pawn, and then we get this kind of type of position that maybe we don't really want to play. And this is why I want to remain flexible with bishop e7, because now if he takes on d5, I can do this intermezzo, right? Bishop f3. There's no tactics on d7. So that's fine. And then the other plan I mentioned for white is queen b3. And then the most natural way to defend the pawn is with queen b6. Queen c8 is a bit passive, but we don't really mind the queen trade. So white plays bishop e3 here. That's white's whole plan. We have exactly the same, I believe, position with colors reversed in some Torre attack, if I'm not mistaken. And in this position, black is extremely solid. We talked about last week, we talked about these types of positions where white has the space advantage, or even in some cases, he wins the bishop pair, like this, let's say. This is all kind of forced. And we'll look at this, how to deal with this, how to neutralize white's space advantage in this type of structure. Black has some good ideas here. Theo has a very good question, and this is something that I wanted to mention even earlier. Do I make this capture on f3 in this variation? In general, no. In general, I want to play bishop h5 in most cases, and I want to provoke this weakness, because this move weakens his dark squares a bit, yeah? So in most cases, I will be playing bishop h5 against h3 in this repertoire. But the only case where we do play bishop takes f3 is that one that we saw when c takes d5 happens. Then we have a transformation in the pawn structure. Theo, the question is knight e5 good? You mean in this position, yeah? Yes, it's fine, yeah. White usually play this way. But then you have to make a decision with white, and you want to take probably the bishop pair. But now, in the process, white has weakened his dark squares. And also, we should not underestimate that the h file has opened up. So there are some ideas connected to this weakness. So it's just like to provoke a slight weakening in the structure. So these are the two basic. Of course, white can do a lot of things in the Reti. It's a very flexible opening, but I'm just showing the main plans that white typically use. This one with queen b3, and the other one with c takes d5. We'll see it in more detail a bit later. Let's come back here to discuss or to make an outline of another very popular approach for white, and this is usually white starts with the move h3. And coming back to Theo's question here, we can always take on f3. It's a very solid approach too, but it's a little, it's a slight commitment to give up the bishop so early. White is still flexible with the pawn structure, and I don't see really a reason why we would have to give up the bishop pair that early. So I would almost always recommend playing bishop h5. And now on to this second popular approach, the Catalan approach. So it's like the normal Catalan, only the bishop is on h5 rather than c8. And this would seem like a big improvement for black. But actually this bishop can become a little bit vulnerable. We will see in some variations. Black goes either white goes either knight e5 or knight h4, and sometimes even f4, and tries maybe to trap the bishop and so on. So it's kind of a tricky approach from white. So after knight d7, what white usually does is to take first on d5. Now again, remember, we cannot take here because there's this intermezzo. So the most solid approach is to take with the e-pawn. And now you see, since he has played d4, white doesn't have this d3 e4 plan available anymore. So he has to go for different plans. And this is now the Carlsbad pawn structure. And here there are a couple of ideas for white. Queen b3 used to be I think still is maybe the most popular move. With the point that when we play queen b6, there's this queen e3 interesting move, check. After bishop e7, knight h4 threatening knight f5. So bishop g6. And here white wins the bishop pair, usually takes on g6, and then he tries to play this kind of position, this Carlsbad pawn structure with the bishop pair advantage. Black is extremely solid, obviously. We'll see also some games a little bit later to see the main plans. And another important move here is knight h4. Not so popular, but maybe more unpleasant. And now if we go bishop g6 and just develop, there are two approaches. Again, he can go for this type of position, and then usually they play h4. Or there is also an interesting move, f3. So here white's trying to push e4, create a big pawn center. It's kind of a weird move with this pawn structure, the knight on the rim, but it's actually quite unpleasant. Black needs to know what he's doing here. So these are, probably the most critical, I think, from a theoretical standpoint, the most critical variations against our setup with bishop g4. So let's come back. We have covered the Reti setup, the Catalan setup. There are two more setups. King's Indian attack setup. This is when white plays d3. And this is where this move order with e6, here we can see the point of playing e6 and hesitating with the c6 move. We still play a non-committal move, bishop e7, and after knight d2, and you'll have a lot of people who will just play this automatically with white, we play not c6, but c5. Because you see, when we play c6, knight goes to d7, it's a more passive setup than if we could put our pawn on c5 and the knight on c6. So in this case, he goes e4, we go knight c6. And what we have here is, again, the reverse Torre attack. We have pretty much the same position, only with colors reversed, which is good for white there, so it should be good for black here too. And Magnus Carlsen played it with black as well, so that's a good sign. And he beat Fabiano Caruana with this in one game. So, I wouldn't say you solved the issue of the King's Indian attack this way with this move order, but you're very close to it. King's Indian attack is not that dangerous anymore. Move like e5 now. When I have the bishop on this diagonal covering my king, it's not nearly that dangerous. And black is doing very well if white closes the center. And by the way, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to stop me, to post the question in the chat. So that's what we do against the King's Indian attack. And finally, there is the move, and we can do it from different move orders, but let's do it from this one. Move b3, so it's the double fianchetto approach. And here we have a very simple, I think, developing scheme. Put the bishop on d6 and try to push e5 eventually. So, a5 is a useful move here. And then we just try to push e5. Again, there was a workshop on this topic already, and if you've been there, then you might remember some ideas. But generally, black is doing okay, very, very sound position. So this is the reason why I chose this move order with e6. A lot of strong players have recently played this way. Now, let me come back quickly to the move order with c6 and just show the differences. It's still a good move order, but there are some differences. So first of all, let's say, we play knight f6. If white would play h3, the Catalan approach, there is no difference. It's absolutely the same as we just saw. Same goes for the double fianchetto. We'll get the same kind of position after b3, e6, and so on. However, there are differences in the King's Indian attack and in the Reti. So let's see them. Let's first see maybe the King's Indian attack. So typically, when we play c6, we put the knight on d7, and then against knight d2, we play e5. And then white, of course, goes e4. This is, again, kind of a well-known position. And in most cases, black would take on e4. And we would get this structure. And I think black doesn't take on e4 because he wants to, but out of necessity. Because the problem is that if you don't take, white will play queen e1 and then threaten to take on d5, and e5 pawn will be hanging. Now, for instance, if I just develop, white goes queen e1, and then how do you develop this? How do you protect this pawn? People think that you just have to take it, and then there's no problem with the pawn, and we have this kind of normal structure. But this is a concession for black, because here we have given our opponent a very nice square, c4. Before the exchange, of course, the knight could not get there. So as black, we have released some of our space advantage this way. And actually, in these positions, I always feel like, this has been played by a lot of strong players too with black, but I always feel like black is kind of on a back foot. It's always like white has some positional initiative. We'll see some examples of that later. And it's all based on this either knight c5 or knight b3, a4, a5. There is some initiative for white. But there is a solution to this. We don't actually have to take on e4. And so let's do it. Let's see it with this move order. h3. Again, we don't commit. We play bishop h5. Queen e1. And now we don't have to take. We can actually sacrifice the pawn. And we sacrifice it in a sort of martial attack style. So we let him take. And now if he takes on e5, which move does black have to justify the pawn sacrifice? All good suggestions, but the Helgi's is the most concrete one. And Bernd too. Knight b4. It's, I think, impossible to defend this pawn. Suddenly black's even clearly better. So white, if he wants to win the central pawn, he has to play g4 and then take. Now knight b4 is not an issue because he can play queen d1. In this type of position, again, remember, we provoke the weakness, yeah, with g4. So now we have this typical, you could say, martial attack type of compensation where we're going f5 and knight f4 now. And it's a really great position, I think, for black, for just one pawn. So, you know, when you castle, most people don't take the pawn. They realize it's kind of dangerous and they play knight h4, they keep maneuvering. But now it's much different because we kept the pawn on d5, so he doesn't have this square, and he doesn't have the d file to operate, and it's much more difficult for white to develop his usual positional play. And, you know, we just go rook e8, bishop f8, very solid position for black. Of course, chances to outplay white in the long run. So that's a suggestion that, you know, I have if you decide to play this kind of this move order with c6 and knight d7. White has kind of another clever type of move with queen e1, and then after e5, e4 to be a little bit quicker attacking this pawn. We'll see how we deal with that plan. So that's another way to fight the King's Indian attack with this setup. And now let's try to see what happens in case of c4, so the Reti. Now it is different, yeah? Now when he takes on d5, we don't have bishop takes f3. We have to take with the e pawn. And now we get this type of position. And here the main move is bishop c5. Of course, in anticipation of this e4, when, you know, like if we get this type of position, the bishop's placed quite well on this diagonal. So it's the most active move in the position. But there is potentially a slight problem with this. There's the move queen b3, and then the best move is bishop b6 when white can win the bishop pair. It's a very solid position, but maybe white has a very slight edge here when he wins the bishop pair. This dark square bishop. So the plan that I kind of prefer with black is bishop e7. And now the point is that usually they play h3. This is one of the cases when we actually take on f3. And the point is that then we play the move d4 to make sure that this e4 doesn't come, you know, we gain some space, and, you know, we get some position like this, which is very solid for black. Knight goes to f6, we play a5, later knight goes to d5 potentially, and so on. So if we have time, I will cover this type of position, but this is like a backup to our main setup with e6. So let us start looking at some concrete variations. We'll start with the Reti approach. And if you have any questions, let me know. So bishop g4, bishop g2. I have to, of course, I promised I will also show you what happens if white goes knight e5. So now in the Trompovsky, we usually retreat to f5. With colors reversed, or f4. And if he goes c4, what's the move that we play in the trump with colors reversed? A very important move here. Yes, Andre, f6. And this is one of the reasons why I postponed development of the knight to f6 for some time, because if he ever goes knight e5, I will have f6. And now we get just a good version of the Trompovsky. You know, if he does this, we can even take. And This is just completely fine for black. He has this, the central advantage. So it's a little bit premature, I think, for white to play knight e5 here, exactly because of this f6 move. And by the way, bishop h5 is less accurate here, because black can then play g4, and if you go bishop g6, there's h4. It's some strange position, but white has some initiative. So f5 is just a more flexible square. Bishop can drop back if you play g4. And then the other moment when white can play knight e5 is after e6. Okay, then it's slightly different. Now bishop h5 is a better move. In general, we want to keep the bishop on this diagonal. Just in the previous position, it wasn't that great. And now if he goes g4, we're going to play f6. We kind of have an extra useful move compared to the previous situation with knight e5. And this is a very sharp position, but black is doing quite well here. He has a big center. And it's a fine position. And then if you go c4, we can go knight d7. And as a matter of fact, here we are transposing into one of the variations that we'll discuss a bit later, where black is also doing okay. So knight e5, nothing to be afraid of. It's just important to remember that if he goes knight e5 immediately, we go bishop f5. If he goes knight e5 after bishop g2, we go bishop h5. Okay, let's come back to the Reti. So knight f6. So first, let's see this plan with queen b3. So usually white starts with d3. Actually, the move queen b3 straight away is very slightly inaccurate. And the reason for that is that here, black has not committed with bishop e7. So when you play bishop e3, I can simply play bishop c5. And this trade is very good for black. Trade a couple of pieces, and the white space advantage isn't that important anymore. So a more accurate way for black is to start with d3. Sorry, for white, to start with d3, and then if black plays bishop e7, then queen b3. Bishop e3. Okay, this is the position that we saw. White gets the semi-open a file, and let's fast forward to this position. So white has the bishop pair, slight space advantage. And now let's see what's the most accurate way for black here to neutralize it. Actually, one of the lecturers on this workshop, Mikhail Marin, he had a game exactly in this position with white pieces against Greek Grandmaster Master Vasilis. So Master Vasilis played the move bishop d6. It's a good move. He wants to connect the rooks by playing king e7. So better than castling, actually, yeah, because if you castle, you don't have pressure on the h-file. So the king is perfectly safe on e7, and the bishop's placed better, more actively on d6. Marin played f4, very logical move as well. Now Marin played d4 to increase his space advantage, create a bind. And now black has a very important move that allows him to equalize. Let's try to think here. Okay, Andre and Michael suggested b5. You are gaining some space, but you are also creating weaknesses. Yeah, especially with the semi-open file. In some cases, there could be this plan. So maybe better not to do that. Bishop b4 suggested by Boris. It's a good move as well. But the best move is knight e4, suggested by Berger, using this point or fact that you cannot, or if you take on e4, I'm taking on h3, and suddenly, no, black's the one attacking. So You shouldn't be taking this pawn. But okay, what if what if I play? I don't know. Can I play this? What is Black's plan then? We go f5, yeah. We saw that, I think, in the previous last week. You know, this kind of bind all pawns on the light squares, and we are limiting opponent's bishop. And now this looks great for Black. Black has pretty much solved all his problems here, and maybe can play even 4 more. So. And the draw was agreed, actually. After knight e4, knight takes e4, they agreed to a draw. So Marin thought that white doesn't have basis for an advantage here anymore. Now, we could argue maybe white didn't have to play and probably shouldn't have played d4 that early. But black, remains very solid. And I actually have a different plan here for black. I will just show it because it's an interesting one to relate to our last week's topic. Knight h7 is the move, trying to play knight g5. So again, f4, and now f5. And in case of g5, or otherwise I'll play knight f6 anyway. In case of g5, where he wants to kind of isolate my knight, this is another important moment. We can carry out a pawn break. Very important pawn break here, and this is the e5 pawn break. But first we have to take on c4. It does look a little bit like some sort of a concession because we improve our opponent's pawn structure, but it's more important now to destabilize his pawn chain, to undermine the g pawn. In case of h4, the knight's going here. And last week we looked at the game of Sam Shankland with the knight was on c7, and there was a very similar, a movement of the knight to this nice e6 square. And now there are some actual weaknesses for white, so it's a very tense position. All in all, this endgame, if you follow some of these ideas, shouldn't be a big problem for black. So let us come back to the middle game in the Reti, which usually happens, or we can come back here, after c takes d5. So now we said it's quite important to include bishop takes f3. And again, white can play this differently. You can play maybe b3 or d3, but these are not that challenging. Black will anyway go knight c6 and bishop e7 and so on. So let's look at kind of the most critical setup. We just develop our pieces. This is nothing out of the ordinary. So this is the game between Richard Rapport and Magnus Carlsen. And here, first of all, let's try to understand what white's plan is. Why would white even play this position? So he has the bishop pair, but he's not really putting it to work at the moment. So what is white even playing for in this position? Who can tell me? Okay, Boris, you are exactly right. Yeah, okay, and I see that Birger is saying that Avruk suggests putting the bishops on e1. Now, we have to move the bishop from f3, of course. So we'll start like this, let's say. And then the plan is to go bishop g2, f3, bishop f2, and prepare the e4 break. And if you're not aware of this as black, you might play some kind of neutral moves, and suddenly you'll find yourself in a worse position because you were not aware that white's planning this in time, yeah? Actually, Magnus already in this position, after bishop e1, he already started taking some measures against this plan. We'll see, it's quite instructive. So he started with knight e8. It's not the only plan, but we'll see it's a good one. And then the point is f5. So we're making it more difficult for him to push e4. So let's say that we play something, like I said, something neutral, knight d6, just to show what white's plan is here. f3. Let's say we want to fianchetto the bishop. So white's going to play e4 here eventually. And he's either getting a lot of space now in the center if you don't take, or if you take, everything opens up. He has the bishop pair now. We might have some counterplay against the d4 pawn, but if we don't manage to, create some tactics or something, he might just have a better, white might just have a better position when these pawns start rolling. So that is white's plan. Question, Helgi, is black okay after e5? So the idea is, of course, to go knight d4. Takes like this. Now it is giving the d5 square away, right? So maybe he's taking on e5 and then going knight d4. Sorry, knight d5. I'm not sure which piece, but something like that. And black's fairly solid. Ah, yeah, we can take here for free. Yeah, so it has to take with the bishop. Okay, and knight d5. Black's fairly solid, but so this is a weakness, yeah? There could be some tactical issues. White. But yeah, you have to play e5 here probably anyway, because otherwise getting crushed in the center. So let's see how Magnus fought against this plan. He played f5. Okay, knight goes back to f6. Now we have sort of a Dutch structure. And a very important question. If white played f3 here, preparing bishop f2 and d4, what should black play? Rapport didn't play f3, but it's important to understand what black should play. And Andre already, Boris, excellent. You already suggested the right plan. It's g4. I mean g5 and g4. White's still not ready to play this because we take and there's knight d4. So then after bishop f2, we play g4 and we're shutting down this e4 plan forever. So we'll see in the game. That was also the main idea in the game. Rapport played knight a4 to get some action on the queen side. We have to play b6. And probably the best thing for white to do now was maybe to abandon this plan altogether and try to do something on the light squares on the queen side, but he just tried to play it anyway. Okay, and after some maneuvering, Magnus decided to anticipate this plan, and he played g5 himself. g4, and this is now a fantastic kind of image, yeah, of black's strategy here. Again, all the pawns are on the light squares. I have these pieces controlling outposts, so it's a strategy to remember in this type of position if you're going to play it. And one last thing I want to show here, because black won this game, this position is still approximately equal, is this move king f7. So a lot of people here would maybe just try to trade pieces, yeah, and then make a draw. But Magnus is always ambitious, yeah. So king f7, and then the plan is to open the h file. The rook goes over to h8. Knight's maybe going there, and you just need the queen to checkmate. And Rapport just kind of lost his temper here, and he lost material. I think he lost that pawn, and black was soon winning. So that's a model game for this structure. You don't need to look at anything else in this line, pretty much. This is all you need to know for this type of position. When was the game played? Very recently, St. Louis, 2019. So it was, a long time control, I think. Okay, so that's about the Reti approach, the modern way for black. Now let us take a look at the King's Indian approach. So a couple of ideas that we didn't cover in the introduction. So knight d2 is the main move. We'll look at queen e1 instead as well. So c5, and now e4 is what most people will play. Again, some people might try to win your bishop pair like this, and that's okay. We know from the Slav defense that this is fine. We are getting, again, play on the dark squares. So this is the game Ivanchuk-Lupulescu. And here, I just want to show the strategy, black strategy in this game, Lupulescu. Play knight e5. Now, you cannot play f4 here because I'm going to have this and this. It's very dangerous. So start with queen e2. And now, very important move for black, g5, controlling these dark squares. So, okay, he eventually pushed f4. Very principled play by Ivanchuk, pushing e5 as well, but black was fine. So after these kind of natural moves, black needs counterplay. You could play rook d8, of course, but Lupulescu played the stronger move, even c4, and now he's getting some space on the queen side. He's getting this square for his pieces. He's in some case he has c3, weakening the structure there, and of course rook d8 will come. Maybe knight d5, and black has completely adequate play here. So that's what usually happens in this type of position. We get good play on the dark squares based, of course, on this g4 move. And if e4, the main move, so we go knight c6, we play the reverse torre. And now basically white has two approaches. Either he tries to somehow prepare e5 with rook e1, or just realizes that this is not going to work and takes on d5. Then the idea would be to somehow get the knight to e5. So some games were played like this. This is all very natural for both sides. And once again, you see that this g4 move has weakened. With this move, he has weakened a lot of the, these dark squares a lot. And after bishop d6, again, black is just. And like I said earlier, all of these positions, they're solid. They're kind of equal at the start, but black has a potential to outplay his opponent in the long term, especially if such weaknesses happen. Now, another game of Carlsen, and I think I mentioned it earlier, against Caruana. So Caruana played rook e1 in this position. This was maybe a blitz game or a rapid game, I'm not sure. We can castle. There is nothing wrong with castling, but Carlsen played like this. He took on e4. So it's an interesting approach. And this is slightly different. We saw the structure when black has a pawn on e5 and the other pawn on c6. Somehow this is a more flexible structure for both sides. White can push e5 on one hand, and on the other, black can maybe use this square for his pieces later. And black has more space on the queen side compared to the other structure. Here, Caruana played e5, which is slightly inaccurate already. He should have kept the pawn on e4. And now Carlsen, let's see what he did. He played knight d7, so you have to play g4. Again, a concession. And then, since this bishop, that's probably one of the main reasons why e5 is a bit suspicious. This bishop is strong. Carlsen played knight b4, and he had already the initiative in this game. If you defend it, I can probably go knight b6 with good counterplay here. So it's an interesting approach as well to take on e4 first rather than to castle, but both of these work. This is also completely fine. So that's very briefly about the King's Indian approach. And one more thing that I want to mention, it's very important, actually, if white starts with queen e1. That's a clever move. Now, if you want to play c5, you'll have to be very careful. Because if you play c5 right now, white can get the initiative in the following way. 95, e4, and then f4. So white didn't waste a tempo on knight d2. He already played queen e1, so these pawns can roll. And this is something that I mentioned earlier, that in some cases the bishop can become a little bit, start feeling a little bit uncomfortable there on h5 when white starts to push f4 and, maybe threaten to trap it. Of course, we can save it, but we might have to make some positional concession to do that. So that's the kind of position that's a little bit unpleasant. And it's possible because he's moved the queen from d1, so e4 becomes possible. So how to remedy that? How to still be able to play c5, but not get into this. If we play knight d7, then this is not exactly the setup we're after, because we want the knight on c6, even though this is still maybe playable. But the clever move is bishop h5. Just kind of a prophylactic move, so that knight e5 doesn't come with a tempo. And now if he goes e4, we won't be able to play c5 probably, but knight c6 is the move. We slightly change the setup, but we still play knight c6, an active move. And this is already bad. This pawn is going to fall. So cannot do that. There aren't that many useful moves for white. If he goes knight d2 as usual, we can even play like this. We already saw this move in one other variation, and then play like Carlsen, c5. If he attacks us, we go back knight c6, almost like Carlsen's game. So that's one small a detail to keep in mind. Okay, so this is the King's Indian attack approach, and another important approach is the double fianchetto approach. So here actually white has kind of a clever move order. It's better to start with d3 actually, slightly better than b3, because if you play b3 you already show what you want. You want the double fianchetto, so black can easily develop like this, bishop d6, and then we have this classical position. And here I'd like to show the game of Garry Kasparov with black against Petr Leko. Garry played again this kind of prophylactic move, bishop h5. There's nothing wrong with rook e8 first or queen e7, but let's just see what Garry did. So typically white here wants to go for e4. So queen c2, now it's an available square for the queen, doesn't have to go to e1, and pushes e4. If white plays, and this is something that I covered in the double fianchetto workshop, if he plays this Reti plan with rook e1, knight f1, as Reti did in some games, like this, what would you suggest here for black? I don't know how many of you were at that workshop, but we have looked at a very, very similar position in the game Reti against Yates. Only I think Yates had the bishop on c6 instead of h5. And black had some clearly bad choices and some good choices. Yes, d4 is the best move. But actually, why? What happened in that game was, let's say that Yates played something like h6, and then in a slightly better version, a white pushed d4. And the point there was that he could go knight e5. He had, I think, the queen on a1. This was the position. And then he could do it. But actually, I think that white can even do it here. It can be a very decent positional, pawn sacrifice for white. So, like Carlsen did once against Caruana. So why to even allow this option? Yeah. When he plays knight e3, d4 is sorry, here d4 is the right move. We are gaining a little bit more space. Yes, we are increasing the scope of this bishop, but we're shutting down the other one. We're creating some potential weaknesses here, and black slightly better in this position. So that's just a slight, review to connect the dots from the previous workshops. Okay, so white shouldn't really be playing that passively. Maybe this worked 100 years ago, but these days you have to play more active chess. So queen c2, rook e8 is what Gary played. Takes, and then we get this typical structure. And again, it's similar to that king's Indian attack that we saw earlier, but there is one big difference, and this is that the pawn has gone to c4. So it's not on c2 anymore, and it has some implications because the knight cannot get there. That's of course good for black. This is potentially a weak square as well. So this is like a good version of that structure for black. Leko played knight h4. Okay, typical plan. And here Gary played bishop c5. Actually, there was another interesting move, b5 here, hoping to open the c file because this would give black a lot of play here. Believe it or not, but the engine already says that this is a winning position for black. Simply, black has threats in a couple of moves that white cannot defend against in a good way. So he cannot take on b5, and black pledges as a good position. Okay, Gary played bishop c5, and there was like a normal maneuvering game here. There was an exchange in the center. The game ended in a draw. So absolutely no problems for black here. And when it comes to this structure, I would also like to show a little bit later one game that, when I was learning this system for black, left like maybe the strongest impression in terms of ideas. It was a game Vaganyan-Kramnik, in which Vaganyan showed a bunch of great ideas for black in one game. So we'll see this shortly. But let me just quickly cover another idea in this double fianchetto setup. And this is this idea. If white plays d3, what is the move in our repertoire? Let's make a small review. What's the move that we play here in this position? Yes, bishop e7 for tactical reasons. Knight d7 is playable, yes, but then we cannot play. We cannot get this bishop takes f3 variation, so we have to play a different type of position. Bishop d6 is possible. Magnus Carlsen used to play like this. D takes e4 is possible. Everything is possible, but our repertoire is based on this move. And then white can play b3, and now white has sort of used the fact that black has played bishop e7, so the bishop is not placed that well on e7 as it is on d6, because our plan is to push e5. And so that's a small victory for white, but not such an important one, because at some point, black should play bishop d6, yeah? So we have the same position as in Leko Kasparov, only with an extra tempo for white. And if you remember, that extra tempo was bishop h5. So really no big deal. We'll still, when white plays e5, we'll still play, sorry, e4 will still play like this, yeah? e5, and same ideas apply. maybe we can play b5 later. Maybe we'll try to maneuver one of our pieces to d4 square, and so on. And with this in mind, I would like to show really one of my favorite games in this opening, Vaganyan against Kramnik. This was played, I'm not sure, but in 1990s, yeah, maybe 1996 or something like that. So it's the move order, it's the alternative move order that we don't play e6, but we play c6, e5. So back then this was the trend to play this way. And these days we know that the best plan for white is queen e1 with knight c4, knight h4, and so on. Vaganyan played b3, bishop b2, attacking the pawn, and then c4. So this move is really, okay, I wouldn't say anti-positional, but maybe it's anti-positional. I don't know. It's a strong player who played it, but it just doesn't make that much sense to play c4 here as white. You know, it's weakening, like we said, weakening some squares, and then the knight doesn't have such a good outpost. But he played it, so we got this structure, very similar to Leko Kasparov. Okay, something normal. And this is the first important moment in the game. And this is the question for you. If you are black, what would you do? Okay, Berger as well. This is exactly the right line of thought. So prophylaxis, 98. We want to, this is the move that he played. We want to, maybe bring our knight to c5, yeah? And later e6. But you cannot do it with this pawn hanging all the time. If we play bishop g6, putting pressure here, white can always play this. But 98 is the move. And it's not only about the pawn, it's actually the fact that the bishop, which is a little bit sidelined, now can join the game in a good way. And we'll see how this happened. So Vaganyan played bishop c3. Actually, now the c4 move makes a lot of sense in hindsight, because he is obviously trying to set up this kind of bind with b4 and c5. But we'll see that he didn't manage to do that. So he played b4. And here Kramnik played a strong move, knight d6. The point being that if you play c5, I'm going to plant my knight on b5. And that's now a very strong knight. And later we can undermine this with b6 and so on. So that was a strong move, stopping basically c5. And now the bishop joins the game. Takes. And now another important moment in the game. So if you're waiting, white has probably a bit more useful moves because he has more space. So what Kramnik did was play c5 himself, stopping white from doing that, but also creating a potential outpost. Now this is weakening d5, but you look at the white knights; they're far away from this square. So we can play like this. Actually, black knights are closer, or this knight is closer to d4. And then knight f8. Okay, there was a maneuvering game after that. I'll of course put it in the PGN so you can see how black won. But basically, already at this point, black has at least a slightly more pleasant position because he's going to put this knight on d4 before white does on d5. So this is a really nice strategy for black in this type of structure. The knight's good on d6. It covers also, I forgot to mention this, but the knight also covers in case of these plans with knight f5, covers that square. Of course, puts pressure on some important pawns. So really nice regrouping. Okay, and I think the last plan. Okay, we'll come to the Catalan plan. Let me just address Theo's question. So Can you clarify again, when do you exchange early on f3? Yes, let me go back to the start. So let's say we start with e6, like this. If you attack me at some point like this or some later point with h3, in 95% of cases, I will play like this. Because I'm trying to provoke, I don't want to give up my bishop pair too early. I'm trying to provoke you into playing like this. And then you can take my bishop pair, but you have weakened your dark squares and your structure. But there is one important moment when we do take on f3, and this is if white plays c4, as in pure Reti opening, and then takes on d5. In that case, I prefer to take like this on f3 voluntarily, because I want to get this structure where my knight gets to c6. And I think someone else mentioned this in the chat earlier, that one of the reasons to keep the knight here for a while is that in case of exchange on d5, you can actually get it to c6, which is more active square. So that's, Theo, that's probably the only moment where I'm voluntarily taking on f3 in this position. Or after d3, bishop e7, importantly, not knight d7. And then again, if you take on f3, sorry, on d5, I'm going to take on f3 and I'm going to get this kind of position. But if you attack me with h3, I'm not going to take on f3 now, because you didn't show your cards with white. You didn't take yet, yeah? So I'm not taking now. So I'm just going to play bishop h5. But if you take, then I'm going to take again, yeah? So that's the whole idea. Now, there are some people who like to take on f3 in any position, just to simplify that choice, but like I said, it's maybe some sort of a concession. Okay, Helgi, let me see. What is the bishop e7, c takes d5, and now d6, yeah? It's an interesting thought. Can I do this? Wait. This rook d8 is coming. What's happening here? Oh, okay, Michael. Let's see. Takes, queen d5. But knight c3 is there. Yes, I could do that. I wasn't sure. So bishop. Oops, sorry, bishop takes. Well, I don't know, rook d1 maybe. Okay, this can become like some sort of unnecessary analysis. I will check this. Thanks a lot for the suggestion. I'll check this, of course, with the engine, and it should give some reasonable suggestion for black, because I have not seen d6 played in a game. So there should be something. And okay, are we sure that this is not just kind of fine for black, like this kind of position? Yeah, no bishop. Yeah, no bishop pair advantage. No, the thing is, if white was a little bit better developed, maybe we could speak about some space advantage if white could push this and this, but yeah. Okay, Grigor says it's slightly better for black. So, of course, yeah, we'll then leave it at that. Okay, that's good to know. All right, let's do the final discussion of this popular Catalan approach. It's been basically non-existent for a very long time. People would typically play either c4 or d3 here, but I've first seen this in games of MVL, maybe 5-6 years ago. Started playing like this with white, and then many strong players followed him. So basically, the idea is, first of all, to start with h3, to kind of force the bishop to a slightly worse square. We'll see this a bit later. And then to play d4. And now black has two options, either to play knight d7. We already saw this, or bishop e7 is sort of a clever move here. The point being that, let's say in this line c takes d5, you could take with the c pawn, and the knight can go to c6. If you played, again, this is a common theme in these variations, if you play knight d7, then taking with the c pawn is not that great. And we will take with the e pawn. So bishop e7, it's kind of aimed against c takes d5, but there is one, I think, downside to this, and this is that white can play a knight e5. Now we go knight d7, knight c3, and here is the point. It's a normal looking position, but and most people here play g4, even strong grandmasters, they just play it in the Slav. This is almost like a Slav type of position with early, e3, bishop f5, knight h4, and so on. And I think black is just very solid here. It's a normal position to play. But f4 is not so common, but it's a bit more annoying. Not only supporting the knight or the pawn if you take on e5, but also trying to, attack this bishop, yeah? Maybe even trap it. So after bishop g6, he clarifies the situation in the center before playing g4. And this has been played in only a handful of games, but this position that arises by force, somehow, I don't know, it seems a bit, it's playable for black, but it seems a little bit static. Like we cannot do much against white's space advantage. Although this is of course playable. You will not lose the game if you play this way, like you will not lose by force or anything, but it feels a bit unpleasant to play for black. So I'm trying to avoid this position basically in different move orders. And so this is the reason I don't play bishop e7 early. I keep the bishop on f8. So I play knight bd7, and let me show you what happens if white goes knight e5 anyway. The difference now is that I take the knight. I go knight d7. So we get this structure. But the point is that I haven't wasted the move on bishop e7. So my next move is going to be bishop c5. So if you play like this, bishop c5, and then I'm going to play maybe even immediately f6. And I'm aiming for, so my bishop is now fine. Remember, if you start attacking with g4, I can go to f7, like in Kramnik's, in a different position, but Kramnik's idea. And yeah, I take with the knight, and I have a solid center here. I'll castle, and black should be completely fine. It's also hard for white's main idea should be e4, but it's not easy to prepare this because of the pin. So that's a really small but important detail, in my view, that we should not play bishop e7 too early in this Catalan, but just go knight d7, so that if he goes knight e5, we take, and we have bishop c5 in one go. And then you might ask, okay, what if he plays knight c3, waiting for me to play bishop e7, and then he can go knight e5? What do you think? What's the difference now? What can black play to avoid this knight e5 variation? Yes, Michael. Yes, very good. Helgi, also probably bishop takes f3. Yeah, either way. We can take now on c4. With the knight, this is a common, common knowledge in the Catalan. With the knight on c3, all of these variations with d takes c4 become, more kind of better, I guess, because there's no queen c2, knight d2, b5 sometimes hits the knight on, if you play b3, hits the knight with b4, and so on. So there's this d takes c4, and eventually we can play b5, either by taking first on f3 and then b5, or b5 immediately. And one thing that I mentioned again in the previous workshop was that Slav setups are typically, so these setups against these two pawns, very what do I say, robust against the d5 break, because you don't have to react. If you react, it's going to be a disaster. Yeah, he's going to open the bishop and the e file and everything. But here you can just castle and then go knight e5, and everything is great for black. And this will fall, and we have a lot of good outposts here. So this is a very solid position for black. Of course, double-edged, but nothing to worry about opening wise. And so this leaves us with c takes d5 as the main choice for white in this position. And I have already mentioned that queen b3 is kind of the old main line. So after queen b6, this maneuver of the queen to e3. And the point is now that black is maybe down a tempo or two, trying to untangle with his, to castle. So after knight c3, we have a couple of ways to solve this problem. One is to go knight f8, followed by knight e6, cover the e file, and then castle. Looks pretty nice, because the knight's also probably going to be good on e6. But I think queen d8 is the simplest, the quickest. Michael, question was, what if f4 here, yeah? I mean, yeah, 96 is not going to work. So we probably have to put a piece on e4. Okay, let's see. Helgi suggesting knight, bishop e4, knight takes, pawn takes, and the point would be at the end of the day. Let's see if we take. No, but this will be good for. So maybe 96 straight away, but still knight f5 is coming. I have a strong feeling that, once you play f4, there should be something on this diagonal. But it is kind of unpleasant. It is unpleasant. Maybe c5. So c5. In case of c5, there is also knight a4. Yeah, bishop c2. I was thinking about this move, but I don't know. It looks unusual, but maybe it's playable. Yeah. Anyway, but knight f8 is, we're playing. Yeah, exactly. Maybe bishop c2 is playable. Knight f8. Yeah, we're kind of delaying our development, so why not play queen d8? Bishop c2 is the computer move. Okay. And black is okay, yeah? Bishop c2. Yeah, why not? Because knight e6 coming, and then d4 is not so easy to defend. If you play, I don't know, something like this, the bishop can get some good square with an e4. So it should be fine. Queen d8, on the other hand, it's a little bit simpler. Yeah, we're just threatening to castle on the next move. And actually, it's a good moment to ask ourselves again, what if he plays f4? I haven't really looked at this move for some reason. I should have. So still the same idea, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because f4 is a huge positional concession. If it does, if you don't trap my bishop, I'm castling, playing rook e8, and white's worse. I don't think so. Michael is asking, is this slightly worse for black? I wouldn't think. Slightly worse than the last position. But black is still fine. It seems like black is still fine because white doesn't have anything here. This is just fine. Maybe there's like this move, and then if I castle rook c1, I guess that's something to check. And that said, I also have knight b6. Yeah, but okay, this Michael, it's like maybe it's better with the queen on b6, but that's already a kind of position to check with the engine because these are tactical details. It's or to analyze, honestly, I haven't looked at this f4 move at all. Should have. It hasn't. I think it hasn't been played in games. That's why. Because in games, knight takes g6 has been played mostly, and also b4 has been played. So I just want to mention quickly, because we don't have that much time left, just want to mention these typical plans, positional ideas. f4 is more like a tactical one. Positional ideas, the minority attack, and the other one is to push e4 against the Carlsbad structure. This was played by MVL, but he didn't get anything with this plan with white. So black just plays solidly, makes sure that he keeps control over this d5 square if white ever plays e4. Okay, this was their game. MVL against Laznichka, and the game ended in a draw. He got control over d5. Theo, good question. Any players to watch or model players in this Capablanca system? So the one with bishop g4. Carlsen plays it. Try to think. All of these, like most of these top players, have played it. Now, Wesley, I think, has played it with black. Yeah, I cannot exactly. Many strong players have played with black, but check Carlsen's games first, because he has a lot of good games. Okay, so this e4 plan isn't dangerous. Let's just quickly go back here. The minority attack b4. Of course, we can play a6, and considering that white has weakened this square, we have knight b6, and then knight c4, and then of course stopping the minority attack while also solidifying the knight and creating a weakness on b4. White's going to play e4 naturally. Yeah, you're welcome, Helgi. And we will now have counterplay against the d4 pawn. So that's one variation to show what we can do against the minority attack. It is also possible to play b5 right away. It's a little bit sharper approach. And then it was played by Grandmaster Bluebaum against MVL. Okay, it's a sharp game, but it's also a reasonable approach if you want to get a sharper position with black. And the final type of position that I want to show here is with the move knight h4. So white doesn't go for this maneuver, simply goes knight h4, bishop e7, and so this is the typical position you get here. I think you can play it with both colors. So if you like to play this kind of position with white, this might also be useful. You have the bishop pair, long-term prospects potentially, but black is extremely solid, as we know in the Slav defense. White's plan typically is just to play this king g2, rook h1, and then try, hope for some h5 break later. But black can, of course, oppose this. So one idea we have here is to go knight f8. So knight's going to e6, so that anytime he plays h5, we can go g5. That's one idea. And then the knight's pretty good here. It's putting pressure. Remember, in some cases they want to go e4, so we're putting pressure on this pawn, mobilizing the rooks. And in some cases, it's a waiting game. Okay, Slav is not the most active of openings, so your idea is to gradually improve your position. But if white doesn't have a plan, then black certainly will find something. Okay, there's much more material in the you will see in the files, opening theory especially. But I hope that this repertoire makes sense, and hope that you will use it to a good effect. And of course, as usual, if you have any questions, I'll be here. A couple of minutes. Birger asked a good question. I just need to scroll back. Does it make sense for white to play the Catalan setup without the h3 move? So let's say we play c6, c4, knight d7. In most cases, they play this h3 to sideline the bishop. I'm not exactly sure what would be the upside of not playing h3. So if they go, let's say, for this plan, maybe knight e5 would be a tempo, let's say. But then I can go bishop f5. So that's not such a big deal. Because what's very important? When you play h3, also it's not only that the bishop has been put to the rim, but also f5 is a weak square, and so white can use that to gain some tempi in the opening based on that. So it isn't really dangerous for black if white, or I'm not aware of any variation where it's dangerous for black if white doesn't play h3. Theo, any books or additional reference? Yeah, I'm not really sure if there are many books written on this exact. Maybe we'll do something on modern chess on this topic. I'm not aware of, unfortunately.
Okay, Davorin, thank you very much for this instructive lecture. I'm sure people will find even more details in the PGM file, so hopefully all the remaining questions will be answered. Guys, tomorrow we continue with our camp based on Slav setups. Don't forget to register separately for the second day of the camp. Thank you for your attention, and hopefully we're going to see you tomorrow. All the best, and bye.